my glory. You're the lifter of my head. Thou, O Lord, art a shield about me. You're my glory. You're the lifter of my head. Hallelujah. 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 You're the lifter of my head. Thou, O Lord, art a shield about me. You're my glory. You're the lifter of my head. Thou, O Lord, art a shield about me. You're my glory. You're the lifter of my head. Hallelujah. 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 You're the lifter of my head. Hallelujah. 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 You're the lifter of my head.
Blessed be your name in the land that is plentiful, where your streams of abundance flow. Blessed be your name. Blessed be your name when I'm found in the desert place. Though I walk through the wilderness, blessed be your name. Every blessing you pour out, I'll turn back to praise. When the darkness closes in, Lord, still I will stay. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your glorious name.
Blessed be your name when the sun's shining down on me, when the war's all that it should be. Blessed be your name. Blessed be your name on the roads marked with suffering, through the pain in the offering. Blessed be your name.
Every blessing you pour out, I'll
Good evening, everyone. It is 7 o'clock right on the dot, so we're going to go ahead and get started. First of all, I want to welcome you to the North Heights Church of Christ. Most of you in here are members here, and we're thankful that you're here. But also, I know that we have several visitors, and we're thankful that you're here especially. This is a great place to be. This is the place to be, I would say, for the entire weekend. I'm excited that we've been able to incorporate this great workshop of defending the truth and studying some of these apologetics for this weekend leading up to our family day this Sunday. I was just telling Brother Kyle Butt that we'll probably have well over 500 people in attendance on Sunday morning, and we're thankful for that. But this is a great place to be tonight, and we are certainly thankful that you're here. Tonight, we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to sing one song together, and then we're going to turn the service over to Brother Kyle Butt for a lesson entitled The Case for Creation. And I'm excited about that. I hope you are as well. I will say this. If you have not put your name on a little piece of paper and put it in the little fish bowl that's out there, you're going to want to do that, because by the end of the night, we're going to draw some names to win some material that's back there on the Apologetics Press table. Now, you're encouraged to go back there at the end of the lessons tonight and look at the material that's there, and all of it is there available for you to purchase. And they do accept cash, credit card, even check. Or if you just want to take it and then even mail a check to Apologetics Press, they trust you enough. So nobody steal it and then run off, but pay for it. Great material back there. I know I've used a lot of that myself and have several of the books in my own personal library as well. So if you've not put your name back there in the fish bowl, you're going to want to do that, and we'll draw those names later on. All right? Let's go ahead and let's stand and sing. We're going to be probably sitting for just a little while, probably about 45 minutes. We'll go ahead and stand right now, and we're going to sing a song together. All right? Is this moving at all? For some reason, it's not advancing. Is there anybody back there running the computer? Okay, go ahead and advance the slide to the next one. It's just an arrow button, like normal Sunday morning we just... No? Let's do it. There, yeah, there's our schedule. Go ahead and hit it again. Okay, that's it. I couldn't remember what it was. Hallelujah, praise Jehovah. Y'all ready? Hallelujah, praise Jehovah. From the heavens, praise His name. Praise Jehovah in the highest. All His angels praise proclaim. All His hosts together praise Him. Sun and moon and stars on high. Praise Him, all ye heavens, and ye birds above the sky. Let them praises give Jehovah, for His name alone is high, and His glory is exalted, and His glory is exalted, and His glory is exalted far above the earth and sky. Let them praises give Jehovah. They were made at His command. Them forever He established. His decree shall ever stand. From the earth, oh, praise Jehovah. All ye floods, ye dragons all. Fire and hail and snow and vapor. Stormy winds that hear Him call. Let them praises give Jehovah, for His name alone is high, and His glory is exalted, and His glory is exalted, and His glory is exalted. All ye fruitful trees and cedars, all ye hills and mountains high, creeping things and beasts and cattle, birds that in the heavens fly, kings of earth and all ye people, princes, greaters, judges all, praise his name, young men and maidens, aged men and children small. Let them praises give Jehovah, for his name alone is high, and his glory is exalted, and his glory is exalted, and his glory is exalted, far above the earth and sky. All right, you may be seated. When I first met Kyle Butt, just like, an hour and a half ago, 2 hours ago, the first thing I told him is, I have used so much of your material. The material that Apologetics Press puts out, and specifically things with his name on it, are just great, and they're wonderful, and they're valuable, and I'm so excited. We are really in for a treat. You are in for a treat, not just because I know of his ability to be able to communicate effectively, but I think you're in for a treat because of the content and the material he's going to be covering is going to strengthen your faith. And so I'm excited about what you've got to say for us tonight. Come on up here and tell us.
In the beginning was matter, and matter begot the amoeba, and the amoeba begot the worm. The worm begot the fish begot the amphibian begot the lower mammal begot the lemur begot the monkey begot the man who imagined God. This is the genealogy of man. That is almost a verbatim quote by a man named Charles Smith, who is an atheist. An atheist is a person who says there is no God. Right now in the United States of America, there are about 22 million people that identify as atheist or agnostics. An agnostic is somebody who says, I don't have enough information about the situation to know one way or the other, but I think there's not a God. And so an agnostic would say, I don't believe in God like I don't believe in leprechauns, or I don't believe in unicorns. I just don't have enough information to prove that God exists. And so you've got 22 million people that say either God does not exist, or I'm pretty sure that God does not exist. Now, 22 million people. I live in Columbia, Tennessee, right below Nashville, and often I go down to our offices in Montgomery. I drive right through Birmingham. Birmingham, fairly big city, especially there for Alabama, and on a Friday evening at 5:30, you don't want to be anywhere in the traffic of Birmingham, Alabama, because it gets very hectic if you've ever been through there. The reason for that is there are about 1 million people in and around Birmingham, Alabama, and they all own 2 cars, and somehow they're driving both of them on Friday nights at 5:30. I don't know how that's possible, but it seems like it is. 1 million people in Birmingham, Alabama. Take Birmingham, Alabama, and fill it with 1 million adults who say, I don't believe in God. And then multiply that city by 22. And that's how many people currently in the United States, about 7% of the adult population says God does not exist. In fact, if you were to then ask some more questions about religion and their affiliation with one, they would explain to you that the largest growing religious group in the United States of America right now is the nones, N-O-N-E-S. People who don't identify with any religion whatsoever. They say that they are not Christian, they are not Islamic, they are not Muslim, they are not anything, they are nothing. They are nones. It's the fastest growing religion in the United States of America today. What we are seeing is it is infiltrating the church, and we are seeing lots of people who have been raised in homes that would start in the beginning sentences differently, but they're ending them. Those young people are growing out of their belief in God. It's something that we need to deal with. The idea that God does not exist, that this universe is all that there is, all that there was, all that there ever will be. The standard going operational theory for how the world got here without a God is that 13.82 billion years ago there was a tiny singularity that exploded in what is called the Big Bang. That initial explosion just brought into existence a universe made purely of hydrogen. Somehow it traveled faster than the speed of light in something called inflation. Then it started coalescing into stars that started cooking all the elements, and we arrived on this planet by blind naturalistic chance processes over 13.8 billion years. We're told that's a scientific theory, that the actual verifiable experimental science validates that. We'll see if that's the case. Because there's another idea that I think some of you would be familiar with, many of you probably. It goes something like this. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God hovered over the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God divided the light from the darkness, and the light He called day, the darkness He called night, and evening and a morning, day one. And then subsequently, day two, God creates the expanse, or the heavens and the sky. Day three, He creates the flowers, grass, and trees. Day four, sun, moon, and stars. Day five, birds and fish. Day six, animals and humans. And ceases His creative activity on the seventh day. The story of biblical creation. Now we have these two ideas, and what we want to know is which one of them is correct. Which one is reasonable. Which one is true. You know, often it is said of the religious people who believe in the idea of biblical creation that they hold that idea by faith. They don't have evidence for that. That often they will just walk into an auditorium like the one that we're sitting in this evening, and they will just let the preacher pour whatever he wants to into their unthinking minds, and they check their brains at the door, and real thinking would always bring a person to the idea that God doesn't exist. But I'd like to challenge that this evening. In fact, what I'd like to do just simply is judge both of these ideas from a scientific standpoint. And here's what I mean by a scientific standpoint. I would like us to look at the evidence and draw whatever conclusion is the correct conclusion based on the evidence. Now, there's going to be a challenge to that because most of our young people, ages 15 years old and younger, have been told that in science, you only deal with things you can touch, taste, see, hear, or smell. And that if it is not physical, it cannot be science. Here's the problem with that. That's never been how science has been done. In fact, most of the science that gets done in the world right now is done thinking about things that we never see or never will see. Let me show you how this would work. Sometimes we're told that the idea of God just can't be a scientific idea because you can't touch, see, taste, hear, or smell God. You can't use your five senses on God. Think about if a person said, okay, I've got something I would like you to do. I found this apple in my backyard, and I want you to find out why there's a big chunk out of this apple. And I'm going to commission you as a forensic scientist to do whatever research you need to do to find the real answer to why this apple has a big chunk out of it. Except, before you start, you can't say that a human had anything to do with it. You can give us any answer you want to, except you can't say that a human had anything to do with it. Okay, so you pick up an apple, and sure enough, there's a big chunk out of it. But as you look at the chunk, it looks like there are some bite marks. And so you go back up to the house, you knock on the door, and the person opens the door, says, yes, can I help you? And you say, hey, I'm trying to find why there's a chunk out of this apple, and it looks like there are some some bite marks on this apple. You wouldn't happen to have your dental records, would you? And the guy says, yeah, well, actually, I was just at the dentist today. I got them right here in my back pocket. Pulls them out. Huh, it's hypothetical. Work with me. And you look at the dental records of the person who owns the house, and sure enough, the dental record bite mark matches the apple perfectly where the chunk has been removed. You say, that's very interesting. And then you decide you're going to swab this particular chunk of apple, and you swab the apple and you send it off, and some DNA comes back from that and has the 3.2 billion DNA letter sequence. And it's a very, very highly improbable that there's any way you could possibly match that except from something that actually bit into the apple or was there. And you go back up to the guy, you knock on the door and say, hey, just curiously, you don't happen to have your DNA sequence, do you? And he says, oh, yeah, I was just doing a genealogy thing last week. I got it right here. He pulls it out. Matches at every single letter. Perfect match. And then you take that apple and you dust it for fingerprints, and sure enough, you get a fingerprint off the top and the bottom. One of them's a thumb, one of them's a middle fingerprint. You go back to this very helpful individual in the house, and you say, you don't happen to have your fingerprints available, do you? And he says, yeah, I got them right here. Pulls them out, matches exactly what's on the apple. You now have a thumb and fingerprint, you have a bite mark, and you have a DNA sequence that matched this guy perfectly. You go to the person who commissioned you to find the answer, and you say, hey, I think we've got it. All the evidence points to this guy. And they say, yeah, but we said you couldn't use a human as an answer. You'll have to find another answer. Oh, so you're going to throw out, before you even start the conversation, something that could match the evidence perfectly. You see, that is what the idea of science, only dealing with things you can touch, see, taste, hear, or smell, and excluding God from the definition, that's what's being done. If all of the evidence points to God, you can't throw God out as an unscientific idea if the scientific evidence points to God. You say, okay, well, hold on just a second. Well, doesn't science deal with physical experiments? Oh, yes, science deals with physical experiments, but many times they're not experiments on the thing that you are proving. They're experiments on something that thing has done. You say, okay, Kyle, we'll unpack that for us. It gets a little complicated. Well, it's not complicated at all. Let's go to a beach. We're on the beach. And we look down on the sandy shore of the beach, and there is a set of footprints. They're going in this direction. You look up, you do not see any person. Nobody says, hey, those footprints can't belong to a person because we don't touch, see, taste, hear, or smell the person. Now, can we know some things about the person having never seen the person based on their footprints? Oh, yeah. In fact, here's what we can know. We start looking at those footprints, and they get real definitive because the sand was exactly right, and we count the toes on each one of the feet. It's got a big toe on each foot. There's a right foot and a left foot, 5 toes on each foot. So can we know from the footprints how many toes the human had? Have you ever seen the human's foot? No. But can you know how many toes they have based on what? The footprint. And then here's what else is very interesting. If you've got some real good technology and some good instruments, you can measure how dense the sand is and how deep the print is, and you can tell approximately how much the person weighed. And if you know some statistical information and you know how far each of those prints is from the other, and you can measure that distance, you can tell approximately how tall the person was. And if you have a little bit more statistical information, you can check the arch on the foot of that print, and you can tell something about the athleticism and the balance of the person from the arch on the print. Now, we've never seen the person. We know that person's got 5 toes on each foot. We know the arch of the person's foot, which would give us an approximate athleticism / balance type. We know about how tall the person is based on the stride, and we know about how heavy the person is, and we've never seen the person. Is that science? Yeah, we do it all the time. If a person shows up at a crime scene, the perpetrator of the crime's not standing there waving their hand saying, I did it. What are you looking for at a crime scene to identify who did the crime? Stuff that the perpetrator left. A tire mark, a little piece of the thread of the coat or the shirt of the person who was involved, a drop of blood, of DNA. You never see the perpetrator, not at the crime scene. But you can know lots of things about that perpetrator based on what they left at the scene. So now, let's take that understanding of what real science is, trying to find the best answer to the evidence that you've got, and ask the simple question. Which better fits scientific data? The idea that a huge explosion came from a tiny singularity, or that there is a personal, all-powerful, supernatural, intelligent creator? Which of those fits better? And here's what we're going to do. First thing we're going to do is take the most fundamental law of science. It's the one that's used in every single scientific experiment ever done. And what we need to know about a law of science is that laws of science are not something you change. You don't vote on them. You don't adjust them if you don't like them. A law of science is a law because there's never in the history of the human body of knowledge been a single exception to this law. Now, you guys understand that. These are my keys. This is my set of keys. If I drop my set of keys, I let them go. I drop them. Which way are my keys going to go every single time? They're going to go down, because there is a law of gravity that says things fall toward the center of the earth at 9.8 meters per second squared on planet Earth. And every time I drop my keys, they're going to go straight down. Unless acted on by another force. And like if I dropped them and smacked them with my hand, they'd go that way and then they'd fall. They're always coming toward the center of the earth. Now, suppose you say, you know what? I don't like the law of gravity. You know, it's just not real friendly to me. I feel like it would be real cool if when I woke up in the morning and I'm laying on my bed, instead of me putting my leg out of my bed and it going down, I would like to just be able to push off of my bed and float across my room to my dresser. Wouldn't that be cool? And you say, yeah, that would be cool, wouldn't it? I'd like to adjust the law of gravity. How many of you would? And we all suggest that we would like to adjust the law of gravity, so we all vote for it. We say, okay, I would. Then we call 1 million of the most brilliant scientists in the world, and they come and we say, hey guys, wouldn't you love to just float from your bed? And they say, yeah, we would too. So we all of us vote, and 1 million of the most brilliant scientists in the world vote, and we get a vote of 1,180,000, whatever we got tonight. And okay, now we have just changed the law of gravity. You know, all I need to validate and verify this is a volunteer to step off a 20-story building. We didn't get enough votes. Oh, well, let's call 2 million scientists. Not 2 million? Let's call 8 billion people, and every one of us vote on the law of gravity and all say we want it changed. Guess what? You step off a 20-story building, and the law of gravity, doesn't matter what you say, is going to pull you at 9.8 meters per second squared toward the center of Earth, and you're going to be in trouble. Because scientific laws don't change. Now, here's the most fundamental scientific law on the books. It's used in every single experiment ever done. You know it, you use it all the time. You might not know that you actually, in many places, would have a scientific understanding that would be the equivalent of a PhD from years ago, but you do. And that is the law of cause and effect. Every single experiment, when you're looking at an experiment, you want to know the cause of something. If your cows are getting sick, you call the vet and you say, I want you to tell me why my cows are getting sick. Well, I mean, sometimes cows, no. There's a cause for this. All scientific experiment has to do with the law of cause and effect. And here's what the law of cause and effect says. For every material effect you see, there is a cause that came before it and was greater than it. Okay? Easy to understand. Now work with me. Okay, so suppose that you are listening intently to every word that I say, right? You're listening intently. Come on. Oh yeah, right there, perfect. Now this is hypothetical, but work with me. You're not thinking about anything else. You're not thinking about a 16-ounce ribeye steak or a good blackberry cobbler with ice cream on it. You're just thinking about the law of cause and effect. And as I am explaining to you about the law of cause and effect, and you are paying so much attention to me that there's nothing else going on in your mind whatsoever, all of a sudden, that book launches across this room at 100 miles an hour, crashes into the back clock, smashing it into 1,012 pieces. Your eyes get as big as saucers. You turn to me and say, Kyle, what caused that? Now, if I say to you, nothing, sometimes books just spontaneously launch themselves across rooms at 100 miles an hour, just continue with me and I just keep going. You are going to wonder why anybody would ever call me to speak. Because books don't spontaneously launch themselves across rooms at 100 miles an hour. There has to be a cause. Okay, now let's work on this. According to the atheistic idea, some 13.82 billion years ago, a singularity exploded and caused the universe to come into existence. The singularity supposedly was a material effect. If you have a material effect, what do you have to have? A cause. So the first question, according to the atheistic idea, is, okay, if you're going to say there was a tiny singularity that they suggest was 10 to the negative 26 centimeters across, smaller than a period at the end of a regular book sentence, the question for that is, what caused that singularity? If it's material, it has to have a cause, because books don't launch themselves across rooms spontaneously. You've got to have a cause for the original stuff. And so, if you just ask the simple question, what caused the original thing? You know, it's kind of like the old joke where the engineer goes to God and says to him, I don't think you did a very good job. I think I could do better than you did. And God says, well, I don't think you could. And the engineer says, yeah, I think I could. And God says, okay, well, let's just have a contest. You make a universe and I'll make a universe, and we'll see who does the best. And the engineer reaches down and grabs some dirt, and God says, hold on, you have to make your own dirt. You've got to get your own stuff. If there's no God, then you have to have something that doesn't have a cause. But see, according to the atheistic idea, in the beginning was matter. And if there's a material effect, then there has to be a cause. And so the first problem with the idea of the Big Bang is that simply it cannot explain itself. Either there is something immaterial, or that first thing has to have a cause, and that cause has to be something that's not material. And so the first aspect of the law of cause and effect simply says you have to have a cause for the thing. Now, the next person says, well, hold on just a second. Well, if you're just saying that God is the cause, well, aren't you in the same situation as the atheist who's saying that the material little thing that blew up is the cause? Here's the difference. We study matter. We know what matter does. What does the law of cause and effect apply to? Every material effect. So we know that all matter has to have a cause, but has anybody ever contended that God is matter? No, in fact, what we have always understood is that God is a spirit. ultimately you have to have something that was not caused, something that was eternal, something that was uncaused, and we know it can't be matter because we know exactly how matter works. Because books don't shoot themselves across rooms. Now here's the next problem with the law of cause and effect as it relates to the atheistic idea. The next problem is that you have to have a cause that was bigger than the effect. Let's go back to our illustration, see how that works. You have the book, and now you are listening again to me, and I don't say that it just spontaneously shot itself across the room because that doesn't make sense. It doesn't work with the law of cause and effect. This time you're listening, boom, the book goes across the room, 100 miles an hour, back to the clock, 1,012 pieces. You turn around, you look at me, you say, Kyle, what caused that? And this time I say, of course, something had to cause it. As you were paying attention to me, a tiny little speck of dust landed on the edge of the book, and it catapulted it 100 miles an hour across the room. Tiny speck of dust. Does that make sense? No. Why not? It's not an adequate cause. It's not big enough. Okay, we're told that, number one, a singularity somehow out of nothing popped into existence, which would violate the law of cause and effect. And then we're told that that singularity exploded and brought the universe into existence. How big is the universe? Oh, no, that's an interesting question, isn't it? I don't know if you like to count. Some people do, I have found. My son, one day, when he was about 6, he's older now in college, and he used to get, no, he was probably younger than that. He was probably about 4. And he would get up sometimes on a Saturday morning, earlier than my wife and I, and we would, tell him to play in the playroom or whatever it was. And this particular Saturday morning, as I recall, he had gotten up, and we got up a little later and said, Drew, what did you do today, this morning, while we were asleep? He said, well, I counted. We said, what'd you count? He said, nothing, just counted. I said, what'd you count to? He said 3,000. You ever got up on a Saturday morning? Sun streaming through your blinds, and you think, looks like a great day to count. You just started counting. Yeah, I have not. I apparently am not a recreational counter. Some people are. As I have spoken around the world and used this particular illustration, I had one little girl come up to me. She had this little grin on her face, and she said, I count too. Well, good. Hey, if you are a counter, more power to you. That's exciting. Let me tell you, if you were a counter and every single number you counted represented a star in our Milky Way galaxy, and you got up in the morning and you didn't count to 3,000, you counted to 10,000 every day. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And every single one of those numbers represented a star in the Milky Way galaxy. Until about 5 years ago, they explained to us that you would need to get up every day and count to 10,000 for 27,000 years to count the number of stars in the Milky Way galaxy. It's actually 27,000, I think 452, something like that. But counting 10,000 every single day, it would take you 27,000 years to count the stars in the Milky Way galaxy. Now, of course, none of us have 27,000 years, and we would be long dead before we ever even got close to counting even a fraction of the numbers of stars in the Milky Way galaxy. But I said that was 5 years ago because they estimate that there are 100 billion stars in the Milky Way galaxy. 100 billion. 5 years ago, they said, actually, we were kind of wrong on that. I drive a 2006 GMC Sierra, and it's been a great truck. It's one of those trucks that you can kick a dent in the side of it, and it doesn't even faze you because it's got so many already. And it's been hit by deer, and it'll probably get hit by another one, and if it gets hit by a third one, you're not even going to be able to see where it got hit by the second one. It's my farm truck. But my wife and I have a little bit different understanding of clean. She feels like clean means like vacuum and no dirt. I've always felt like clean means you can seat the number of passengers that is stated in the owner's manual without moving trash. That's what I've always thought clean meant. And so if it says you can hold 5 passengers, that means you didn't have to move some McDonald's stuff to put another person in for 5 passengers. This is what I've always thought clean meant. My wife is a wonderful, kind Christian lady who has, if I were to say helped raise our kids to be Christian, like helped would be like has done a lion's share of the raising, and most anything good that has come from the raising of our children has been my wife's work and the Lord. But I say all that to say, she got in my truck, and now it was a while back, but she said, "Kyle, we're not going to be able to take your truck on Sunday mornings anymore to church, to worship." I said, "Why, babe?" She said, "Well, because when I get out, there's dirt on my Sunday morning clothes. I just can't have that. Can we just take my car?" I said, "Okay, all right, either." I say all that. It's way too long of a story to say this. I learned something about that little plexiglass thing right behind the gear shifter. Behind that, there's information. Like it tells you how fast you're going. Tells you how many miles you got on your vehicle. If you take, let's say, a paper towel and some Glass Plus or Windex, you can wipe that off and look past there and see stuff. Who knew that? It's amazing to me. I cleaned the plexiglass thing, and now I can see there's all kinds of information that I didn't have. Did you know they were looking out into the night sky, and they estimated 100 billion stars in the Milky Way galaxy, and then they said, you know what we forgot to calculate? Space dust. There's so much space dust out there that we thought it was 100 billion stars. Actually, there's 3 to 4 times that in the Milky Way galaxy. There are actually 300 to 400 billion stars in the Milky Way galaxy. Oh, so now you don't need to count for 27,000 years. Now you have to count for 27,000 years times 3 or 4. It might take you over 100,000 years to count the number of stars in the Milky Way galaxy, counting 10,000 every single day, not just on Saturday mornings. Now that is a lot of stars, but let's put it in perspective. Hold on just a second. Stars are one thing. It's one thing to say star. Okay, yeah, I mean, we look up in the night sky, see stars all the time. It's another thing to get a concept of what a star is. We have a medium-sized star as the pivotal point of our solar system. That word solar, most of you know, means sun. We have the sun as a middle-sized star. Not overly big, not overly small. You can fit 1 million Earths inside the sun. 1 million. There are some stars that are 2,000 times the size of the sun. So you can fit 2 billion Earths inside of some of those bigger stars. Now, every time you say a number, 1, 2, 3, 4, it represents a star, some of them 1 million times the size of the Earth, some of them 2 billion times the size of the Earth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And those numbers represent 300 billion stars. Now, I don't think it's any wonder that the idea that a tiny singularity exploding doesn't adequately give you a cause big enough. Oh, well, hold on a second. I didn't quite get done. We live in the coolest galaxy, of course, I because it's named after a candy bar, obviously. No other galaxy is named after a candy bar, the Milky Way galaxy. Okay, there are 300 to 400 billion stars in the Milky Way galaxy. Did your mind go to the next real question? That's one galaxy. A galaxy that's got 300 billion stars, many of which are 2 billion times the size of the Earth. How many galaxies are there? Oh. Okay, get your counter out again. Start counting to 10,000 every single day. There's 100 billion galaxies out there. And some of those galaxies are so big, you can fit multiple Milky Ways inside of them. And so now when you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, those numbers don't represent stars. They represent galaxies. And some of the galaxies are 3 times bigger than the Milky Way. That's got 300 billion stars, that has stars in it that are 2 billion times the size of the earth. You tired of it yet? I can keep going. I mean, you want me to? Because I can tell you about how long it's going to take you if you travel the speed of light to get across the entire universe. For a long time, they said it'd take you 43 billion years. If you could travel at 186,000 miles a second, 7 times around the equator in 1 second, they said it's going to take you 43 billion years to travel the speed of light across the universe. And then they said, we were wrong. We've done some recalculating. It looks like it might take you 96 billion years traveling the speed of light to get across the universe. And then at the end of the article that said that, where they changed it, they said, but several Oxford scientists say it could take 250 times that. Hey, it's going to take you 93 billion years or 250 times that. Do you think it is an accident that the psalmist wrote in Psalm 19, 1 through 3, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows his handiwork. Day unto day utters speech, night unto night utters knowledge. There is no language, no voice where their sound or their speech is not heard. You know what that's saying? Every person intuitively knows that when you look up into the night sky and you see the vastness of space, it screams one thing to you. There is something bigger than this. Now, you can know that there is an eternal, had to be a first cause that was not material, and all-powerful, had to be a immaterial first cause that had so much power that being could bring into existence a universe that is 96 billion light years across or 250 times that. Now here's what we're doing. Romans chapter 1 verse 20 says, for since the beginning of creation, God's invisible attributes, things you can't see about God, are clearly seen, being understood by the things which are made. You can look at what's made, and there are some things you can know about God. What? Even his eternal power. You know something's always had to be here, and it can't be matter. And the thing that's always had to be here that can't be matter had to be massively, ridiculously powerful. And there's something else you can know. And it is as intuitive and as irrefutable as any statement ever has been. And that is this. When you see design anywhere, you can know and do know for an absolute fact that there was an intelligent being behind the design. Let me show you what I mean. You're walking back on our proverbial beach. We spent a lot of time on this beach. I know y'all feel like you've been on vacation, but work with me. I mean, we're back on the beach. And now on the beach, we look down and sure enough, there is a laptop computer. Okay, exciting. So you pull up the laptop computer, you flip it open, you hit the power button, it comes on. It's got a graphics card that's as good as you've ever seen. It's got a processing unit that is processing information faster than any laptop computer you've ever purchased. And you think, wow, this is awesome. A laptop computer that just maybe like the one in the back that flipped North Heights right up there for us. I mean, something akin to that. And this particular laptop device is amazing, and you think it's wonderful, and you wonder how it got here on this beach. And there's a man in a white lab coat, walks right up to you. And on the lapel of his white lab coat, it says that he has a PhD, a terminal degree in personal computing origination. Oh, it is your lucky day. This guy has a PhD in where laptops come from. and you say to this individual, hey, I just found this laptop on the beach. Can you tell me how you think it originated? The laptop, like the one that continues to flip stuff up on the top, and he says, yes, I think I can. Will you show it to me? And you hand it to him, and he looks at it, press all buttons. He said, yes, here's how I think this occurred. Millions of years ago, something like lightning struck the sand of this beach and caused plastic to form. You say, well, hold on just a second. I mean, I know that sometimes lightning can make some type of glass form, but have we ever seen it make any kind of plastic? And he says, no, but these are plastic keys, and so there has to be a naturalistic explanation, so that would be the best one I could posit right now. And you say, oh, okay, well, what happened then? And he says, well, that plastic was washed out into the ocean, and it was battered up against the coral reefs of the rocks and different things, and that plastic was cut into these keys that you see, and those keys somehow were washed through a school of squid that sprayed ink on them, and that ink somehow came out in the numbers and the letters that we see. While that was happening, there was some copper ore that was washed down from a nearby mountain, and it washed into a hydrothermal vent, and it actually refined the copper into pure copper wire, and some of that wire got hooked to some of these keys, and that wire also then got hooked to the shell of a sea turtle, and it started to spin the wire out into long, very thin, and you say, wow, I mean, have we ever seen that happen? And he said, no, but if we're going to have a naturalistic process, it's got to be something like that. And you say, it is, that doesn't really make sense to me. Can I have my computer back? And you take it and you flip it over, and the back of it says Dell. And you think, oh, I think I've got a better explanation. Some very intelligent people working together at the Dell company put together a working computing device. Now you say, okay, that's trivial, Kyle. You're mocking, you're making fun of you. Okay, no, because we are told that something even more incredible than that happened. Do you know right now we have in this auditorium any number of, I don't know how many, we may have 100 over that. They explain to us that it is the most complex 3 pounds of matter in the universe. It weighs 3 pounds, and they say if you poke on it, it feels like unbaked bread dough. One of these particular devices, now listen to me, this is fascinating to me. I didn't even believe this, but it's true. One of them has more electronic connections than every single personal computing phone or routing device on the planet. Okay, now I'm going to repeat that so you understand what I just said. One of these 3-pound computing devices has more connections than every single man-made personal computer, phone, or routing device. Together. All added up. It's in your head right now. They say there are no pain receptors in it. Like if a person were to actually take your skull cap off and poke on it, you would just feel pressure. You wouldn't even feel pain. After they got through your skin and skull, the pain would be there. But once they got to it, you could just poke on it. I wouldn't advise it. It's not a good idea. You can process information at 300 miles an hour, faster than a NASCAR driver can drive. You could learn, in theory, 40 different languages. You can take in massive billions and billions of bits of information with your visual eyes and process it all at once. All the while, your brain is telling your body exactly what 50 different drugs it needs to be processing and punching through your body. It's causing your heart to beat. It's regulating your temperature. It's doing all of that stuff that you don't even know it's doing. And it is the most complex computing device ever seen on the planet. And every one of us knows that if somebody said that a laptop computer arose by chance, mindless processes over millions of years, they would be laughed at, they would be scoffed, they would be told that that is ridiculous. Why would you even say such a thing? But then for a person to say that a human brain arose from mindless chance processes over millions of years, somehow that's a scientific idea. No. No, it is not. Whenever you see design, you know there's an intelligent designer. Do you know that there's no possible way that scientists can even come close to making anything as remarkable, as even remotely as remarkable as a human brain? So you've got the culminated human body of knowledge that cannot even come close to making something as remarkable as a brain. And yet a laptop they would make, we would look at it and say, wow, these guys are brilliant. These ladies are amazing. But that pales in comparison to the brain that made that laptop. What do you know? If a laptop takes an intelligent designer, the brain that makes the laptop takes a much more intelligent designer. Let me tell you how this was probably the most forcefully used that I've ever seen. It's one of, if not the most used arguments from the biblical text. For every house is built by someone, but he who built all things is God. I am fearfully and wonderfully made, and that my soul knows right well. In 1976, there was a man by the name of Anthony Flew. He was the world's leading atheist at the time. He wrote a philosophical paper on atheism called Theology and Falsification that became, and if I understand it right, still is, the most written about, most widely distributed atheistic philosophical paper of the last 100 years. This guy was the leading atheist in the whole world. He was debating a man by the name of Thomas B. Warren. Thomas B. Warren, member of the Lord's Church, had a PhD from Vanderbilt. I think it was in the philosophy of science, I think was his PhD. Don't quote me on that one. But they were in Denton, Texas for a 4-night debate. It was going to be 2 hours every single night. In Anthony Flew's last book, There Is No God, he talks about this debate and how in all of his life as the world's leading atheist, this was the most well-attended event he ever put on. 5,000 people came every single night for 2 hours. Now think about that. I think it was from Monday to Thursday night. 5,000 people came every single night to listen to these two men stand up and debate the question, which is reasonable? There is a God or there is not a God? Thomas Warren, I think it was near the end, stood up one evening, and this was back during the days of overhead projectors. I don't know if you remember a good old overhead projector. I never used them much. It was a contraption that had a glass surface with a light underneath it, and you put a clear piece of plastic on it, and it shot it up to a mirror that projected it onto the screen. And he had a little pencil drawing of a prosthetic limb, an artificial hand, that he put on that overhead projector. And he said to Dr. Flew, the world's leading atheist, did this prosthetic limb have a designer? This artificial hand, did it have a designer? You know, prostheses are pretty neat. Not many years ago, there's a guy by the name of Dr. Kukin who was in charge of some prosthetic research, and they made a 10-pound metal alloy arm that was something that nobody in prosthesis had ever seen. And here's why. Here's what it had. It had 6 motors in it. That a 26-year-old Marine young lady lost her arm, and they took this 10-pound metal alloy arm, cost about $4 million, not counting the research and development, just the construction of it, put it on her shoulder and took little wires and hooked them to nerves in her shoulder. So that when she thought about moving her pinky, well, if I understand it right, they miswired it to start with. So she would think about moving her pinky and the thumb of the thing would move. And so they had to, train her to think right or to wire it correctly so that when she thought about moving her pinky, she literally could use the nerve in her shoulder to move the mechanical fingers of the prosthesis, of the artificial hand. Dr. Kukin said, this is amazing. He said, we've never seen anything like this. said this young lady, she can now do stuff we've never seen done. She can hold a jar of spaghetti sauce and take a spoon with the other hand and scrape out the remaining spaghetti sauce with a fake hand. It's amazing. Says she can fold a pair of pants without using a hard surface. Wow, that's amazing. He said, but it's still clumsy. $4 million? Still clumsy? Compared to what? I mean, you take a knife and cut a wire on a $4 million prosthetic limb and wait 6 weeks, and what happened? Still cut, isn't it? You take a knife and accidentally cut some of the arteries or veins that are on your hand, what happens? Immediately a 22 chemical blood clotting cascade goes directly to the cut but nowhere else. And it starts to physically and by itself repair where it's been cut. You take a hammer and you accidentally smash the finger of one of your regular, old, normal, not $4 million hands, and you hit it so hard that it chips little pieces of bone off of your finger, what happens? Immediately your body sends an enzyme down to start eating away the pieces of bone that aren't going to be used, but your body is smart enough to know which pieces are, and it starts moving the pieces that are going to be used to repair the bone back into place and eating away the pieces of bone that you don't need anymore. You take a hammer and you smash a finger of a $4 million metal alloy prosthetic hand, and what happens in 6 weeks? You're in debt. It doesn't fix itself. Simple question. Thomas B. Warren says to Anthony Flew, does this prosthetic hand have a designer? Flew says, yes. He's got to. I mean, if you're going to be the world's leading atheist, you can't say it doesn't. Everybody knows that a prosthetic hand has a designer. They don't just pop up. Dr. Warren takes the slide of the prosthetic hand off of the overhead. He puts the slide of the real human hand up. And he says to Dr. Flew, does this hand have a design? Now you've got a problem. Because number one, if you're going to be honest and logical, if the prosthetic hand has one, then the human hand's got one even smarter. But if you're going to remain the world's leading atheist, you can't say yes. So what do you do? In 1976, he took the dishonest, illogical route and said no. Dr. Flew then followed that up with, well, how did it get there? Dr. Warren followed it up and said, how did it get there, Dr. Flew? And Flew said it just grew there. That was in 76. 30 years later, I told you about the book that Flew put out, There Is No God. But the no was marked out. And in 2006, when he's in his 80s, he says, I have always followed the argument where it has led me. And in 1976, I thought it led me to the idea that God doesn't exist. The title of his book actually was, There Is a God, How the World's Most Notorious Atheist Became a Believer. And he said, the evidence for design is so overwhelming that any person being honest with the evidence that we now have in the scientific community today has to come to the conclusion that there is a supernatural, all-powerful, eternal, personal God. Folks, that is a scientific conclusion. It doesn't take the world's leading atheist to come to that conclusion. Let me tell you what I mean by that. Several years ago, we had a mother that called us and said, hey, I would like to get this book, which is a book that goes through a lot of the information that we did tonight. I'd like to get it for my first grade son's class fellow students. And we said, well, hold on just a second. That's probably not your best idea. That's about a 7th and 8th grade level book. She said, I know, but I've looked at it. It's got all the information for creation in it and that I want them to have because I don't think they're going to get it in their school system. So I want them to have it. She went and talked to the principal. The principal said, okay, give it to them as a Christmas present. She said, okay. So she calls us. We send her, I think 35 copies of it. She gives them out to her son's first grade fellow students as Christmas presents. She said, as she sent us the email the next year, she said, let me tell you what happened. The next year in 2nd grade, my son had a teacher that was very pro-evolution and very pro-naturalistic explanation. And this teacher said to the 2nd graders that there's no design, that evolution is what caused all of this, etc. And one of the students in the class who got the book the year before said to the teacher, that's not right. God created all the animals and all the things that we see in this world. And the teacher said, no, have you not read our book? Our textbook explains that evolution did that. And the student says, well, I have a book at home that shows that God did this and that design is the best answer. And the teacher said, well, no, that book is wrong. And the 2nd grader said to the teacher, well, that book makes a lot better sense than what you're telling us. It does. It makes better sense. Because when you see design, you know there's a designer. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. That is still the most fundamental, most accurate and truthful scientific statement for the origin of the universe that has ever been uttered, and it will be as long as this universe exists. Sure appreciate you being here tonight. You have listened so patiently and kindly. I am so excited about what North Heights congregation has got going here. You guys are in for a treat, really, in a lot of ways, because I do these things all over the country, sometimes all over the world. I have not seen a snack spread like these guys got. And look, I rolled into coffee with my favorite creamer in the world, Delight Caramel Macchiato. Where else do you have Delight Caramel Macchiato creamer that you can put in your coffee and just bring it into the auditorium and drink it? I have hardly even seen that. That's remarkable. These guys have done a lot of work. Looks like to me they've done a lot of preparation. Looks like they've done a lot of praying about this, as I have. And we are trying to make one thing stand out this weekend. And that is the truth that there's a loving God who cares about each and every one of us, and that you're not an accidental chance happening on this planet, but God put you here for a reason, to bring glory to Him, and you have meaning and purpose for no other fact than that you're made in the image and likeness of that God, and that's an exciting idea. I want you to know some things about what we've got going in the back. I've got back there our material from Apologetics Press. It's all for sale. But we are nonprofit. And what I mean by that is we are not in this to make money. What we want is people, and especially young people, who need the material that we have to get it. And so you'll see a price back there. And if you want to pay that price, fine, great. It might be that you're not a believer and you say, I don't want to support Apologetics Press at all, but I'd like to see what you guys got. Okay, take anything we got back there. Take one copy of anything we got back there with you. If there's something back there and it's $20 and you say, well, I only got $2, okay, we'll take $2. We do not care about losing money on any products. Now, most all of our stuff is online for free. We've got most all of this stuff in video form on YouTube or on our website that you're absolutely free to go check out, download, you can print, etc. Some of us still like a printed book. If you're like me, I like to have it in my hand. I like to hold it. I like to flip the page. I like to write on it if I want to. And so that's why we print books still. And if you want a book, hey, there's one back there that deals with everything that we're going to do this weekend. And please avail yourself of that in any shape, form, or fashion, whether online or from our materials. And like I said, if there's something back there and you need it and cannot pay for it, don't worry about that. Take it, because we want it in the hands of the people that need it. And I just want to say a special thanks for your presence this evening. Special thanks to the elders of the North Heights congregation and for all of you who have done so much work to prepare for this and to pray about it and to put time and thought into it and to invite people, and really appreciate you being here. I'm going to turn it over to Alex. I think he's got some drawings to do, and we'll go from there.
All right. All right, so we're going to give away 2 books tonight, one of which is the one that you mentioned just a minute ago. It's called Truth Be Told, Exposing the Myth of Evolution. And you said this is written for about what age group? About 7th through 8th grade, but in my mind, it's probably written for old Alex and his brain as well, so that'll work out really good. All right, we're going to give that one away, and then we're also going to give away The Science versus Evolution by Jeff Miller as well, this book. And I think that both of these. Okay, come up here and talk real quick. Okay.
This book right here, it is not a light read. And what I mean by that is, I've been working at AP for years, and when this came out, it took me a while to get through. And it's very high level. Jeff has got a PhD in mechanical engineering with an emphasis in thermodynamics from Auburn. And you don't pick this book up unless you're kind of serious about it. Now, so, I mean, if you draw out one of these guys' names and it's this one, then you might swap it. But once you get done with this book, if you have the idea, inclination that you want to know the hard-hitting, high-level stuff, this book, when you get done with it, you just think, okay, that's it. That's the end of the discussion. This answers most every single thing they've got in the regard of evolution. So that's what this book is.
I chose that. I had used this book in several papers that I have written, and it's very, very helpful. All right, Kyle, well, you draw, okay? Come on back up here. You draw a name out there, and let's see what it says.
Kyle Butt.
Oh, well. Okay.
Just kidding.
Pam Chapowski. Where's she at? I saw her. Pam? Come on up here.
Okay, Pam.
All right, you get to choose. Light reading. Okay, well, then here you go. There you go. Perfect. Excellent. There you go. Great job.
Can't say that anymore, can you?
All right, one more. Linda McNeil. Where's she at? All right, Linda. There you go. That's perfect. All right. Thank y'all so much.
All right. Can you guys hit the slide? Yeah, there it is. You can see behind me what the schedule is for tomorrow. We'll be back up here at 1 o'clock. Kyle talked to us about, you see in quotation marks, the so-called problem of dinosaurs. And then we'll have a little break, and then after that, he'll come back and talk to us again, creation versus evolution. And then we'll end, before we're done on Saturday, with kind of a questions and answers. Is it going to be like an open forum? Yep, just kind of an open forum. If you have a question, you want to yell it out. It doesn't have to be related to this. Anything maybe you've been thinking about, dwelling on, maybe you've heard something related to these things we're talking about this weekend, you can toss out your questions to him, put him on the spot, and he'll get a chance to respond to that. I'll say one more thing, and then we'll have our closing prayer. Obviously, please be back here tomorrow. This was just the introduction, okay? This is not it. You're not done. We're just getting started. So come back tomorrow. Please do so. I'm thankful that he mentioned, if you have not seen or read, or perhaps there's maybe an audio version just of the War and Flu debate, I cannot recommend it highly enough. Thomas Warren, I never got to meet Thomas Warren. I never got to sit and listen to Thomas Warren, but I've read many of his things and listened to him and watched a lot of his material. He was a giant. He was a good Christian man who loved the truth. And I'm thankful that I got to hear him, even though I never got to meet him. You have got to meet. You've got to see and listen and sit at the feet of Kyle Butt. And you will get to tell that to your children, who your children's children will say, well, I never got to meet Kyle Butt. And whoever will come along after him to continue that, carrying that torch of apologetics, you'll say the same thing about him. So that's the privilege, that's the blessing you have, to be here, to sit at the feet of this good Christian man who loves the truth. So do not just make this a one-time thing. Come back tomorrow and certainly be back here this Lord's Day. Let's end with a prayer and then we'll be dismissed. Our Father in heaven, we love you so much. We're so thankful that you love us. We're thankful that you made us in your image. We're thankful, Father, that we have the privilege to serve you through the faithfulness of your Son. We're thankful for his sacrifice, which washes away our sins, allows us to have the promise of salvation now and forever. We're thankful, Father, that your word is provided for us, that we can open it, understand it, and come to a knowledge of the truth. We're thankful, Father, for men like Kyle who have devoted their lives not only to knowing your word, not only to knowing how to defend your word, but how to look up and not only marvel at the beauty of your creation, but to open the eyes of those who are choosing to blind themselves to what it represents about you, our Maker. We're thankful, Father, for Jesus, in whom we pray. Amen. You guys are dismissed. Thank you.